Guys, so today we're going to do some exercises to help children feel calm, to feel regulated, just to be able to become more aware of their bodies and to control kind of what their bodies are doing and what their minds are doing within that, okay? So there's a few different things that there's actually a ton of different things that we teach in yoga that can help with calming and regulating little bodies and minds, as well as adult bodies and minds, really. So I'm just going to show you a few of my favorite tricks that I use with children that can really help them over time. And again, as I've said before, you know, with yoga, it's just like anything else. The more you practice it, the more it becomes a part of their lives, right? So the more you encourage them to do this consistently, every time you're kind of seeing those behaviors start to emerge, things like emotional outbursts or physical outbursts such as hitting or pushing. Sometimes we see dysregulation in the form of body control, a loss of body control. So the kids that might be falling over a lot or just kind of falling on the floor, anything like that. Those are all just forms of dysregulation. And so children just need a little guidance and support and help, and they need some tools, which is where yoga comes in. Yoga provides lots of physical, mental, and emotional tools for children. So let's go ahead and move on to a few of my favorites. The first one I'm going to show you is a sequence. This I call the countdown sequence. So what it is basically is when you see a child starting to get to that state, or even just in a regular daily practice, you can guide them towards turning to their yoga mat. It's a metaphorical mat. It doesn't have to be an actual mat. And what we're going to do is we're going to do 3 poses. You can do 5 poses too if you have maybe older children. And you count down. So pose number 3, pose number 2, pose number 1. And eventually what you'll notice is you start doing it with them in the beginning for the first several times that you do it. And eventually you'll notice that when they start to feel that feeling in their body, you can give them a signal and they will just kind of go do their pose on their own. So it's really their poses on their own. It's really such a wonderful thing and such a wonderful gift you can give them. So countdown sequences. Here we go. You can sequence any 3 poses you feel like. It's really that simple. So if your child has a few yoga poses that they really love, often in my classes it's candlestick pose is one, rock pose or child's pose is one, tree pose is one. They can come up with the 3 poses that work the best for them. 3, 2, 1. If not, then you come up with 3 poses for them. I'll show you a couple of sequences that I really like to use with children, and then you can kind of go from there and decide what works best for you, okay? So pose sequence number 1. Here are our 3 poses. Here's our countdown. Warrior 2 is 3. So we're going to take 3 breaths here. All right, and then 2 is star. 3 breaths. And pose 3 or 1 is mountain, right here. 3 breaths. Okay, and then once they've done those 3 poses, it should help their bodies kind of their nervous systems balance back out and regulate and feel a little bit calmer. You can always go to the other side if you feel like they need a little more time. You would do your warrior 2 on this side, then again your star, and then again come to mountain. So that's the standing sequence that I really like to use. There's also a ground sequence that I'll show you that seems to work really well as well. So come on down to hands and knees here, right? Hands and knees are each about hip distance and shoulder width apart. And you're just going to take 3 deep breaths in your table. Pose number 2 is going to be your downward dog pose. So you're just going to curl the toes under, lift the knees, lift the hips, press back, and hold here. Palms and feet are firmly rooted into the mat. 3 deep breaths. And then finally, it's going to be your child's pose or your rock pose. So you drop back down to the knees and the hips come to the heels. You can rest on your hands or your forearms and take 3 deep breaths. And then slowly come back up. All right, so now we're going to do a different technique for calming and regulation in children. I really like to pair movement with breath for children. It's getting the relaxing rest and digest sensation that the deep breaths bring to the nervous system and the body. And at the same time, the children are really feeling their bodies and they're able to move through it. I don't know if you've ever spoken to a child who has difficulty regulating their body, but when they're able to describe it, you will often hear that moving feels really calm to them. So instead of forcing a child like that to have to stay still and breathe, that can a lot of times be counterproductive and cause even more emotional dysregulation, which can then cause the behavioral dysregulation, right? So giving them sort of that outlet, that ability to say, hey, it's okay if I move my body, okay? Let's just start to work on moving it in a controlled way and in a way that accomplishes what we're trying to accomplish, right? So there's a few breathing techniques that I really like to use with children like this to help them feel a little more balanced, stable, regulated. I'm going to show you a couple of those today. So the first one we're going to do, our first movement with breath technique. It's going to be what we call swoosh breath. And I love swoosh breath because the children love swoosh breath. And I will often use this, especially when children come to my classes just kind of like, wah, all over the place, right? I'll say, let's do swoosh breath. So here's how it works. You're gonna take your feet wide, nice and wide. And sometimes I will even say, stomp, stomp your feet so they can feel the ground beneath them and really get that kind of feedback from the ground, right? And for swoosh breath, we're gonna inhale, big belly, inhale, while we reach our arms up. And as we exhale, we're gonna swoosh all the way down between our legs and come back up. So nice controlled movement here. We don't wanna be just like flailing around, but we definitely wanna get some movement in, okay? So here we go. Let's inhale, exhale, swoosh, and roll back up. Let's do that one more time. Ready? Inhale. Exhale, swoosh. and roll back up. As you'll notice, that gave you and your child space to really just let it all out as you float down, right? Swoosh, just let the breath out, let the movement out, let the wiggles out, okay? So that is swoosh breath. Our second technique here, technique number 2 for movement with breath that I really like to use with kids, among many others, is called Stomp, Stomp, Find Your Mountain, okay? This is a really big one because children love to stomp and to move and to get that feedback. If you've ever talked to an OT or worked with an OT, some of their strategies for children that have difficulty kind of regulating and controlling their body includes some form of pressure, some form of feedback, right? And so one of the techniques that I like to use is stomping, right? So they can really feel that. They feel that pressure through their feet. They connect with the ground and the earth, so you have that grounding element there. And then they also are using their breath in the technique. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna take our feet just a little bit apart, and we're gonna take a big inhale. And on the exhale, we're gonna stomp both feet. Ready? Here we go. Inhale. Exhale, stomp, stomp. Okay? So we do that probably about 2 to 3 times, and then we find our mountain. Mountain pose is here or here, okay? So let's try that together. Let's see if we can stomp, stomp, find our mountain. Here we go. Inhale. Exhale, stomp, stomp. Inhale. Exhale, stomp, stomp. Inhale one more time. Exhale, stomp, stomp, find your mountain. Great job.